better than your currency. Splurging millions buying houses like Monopoly.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host Nathan Birch, and this is the show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Hey guys and girls, this week I have something really exciting to talk about. It's something new and maybe something I can relate to a lot of investors about. So obviously for the last sort of 12 years or so that I've been in the public eye, doing videos and going on TV and news and all that sort of stuff, and putting out content. I've talked about, having a large property portfolio. I think I came out around 25 properties that I started talking about my journey. And then, nowadays I've got about 230 properties in my portfolio. And, sometimes people are like, yeah, but I'm just starting out, Nathan. I'm just doing something that I don't know. It's scary, it's risky, or whatever the case may be. Everybody's got, their feelings and their emotions along the way. And, going back, I'm 36 now, and going back, 18 years, that's half my life that I've been investing into property. And I still remember when I bought my first one, I thought, oh, shit, I'm going to go bankrupt. I just got myself into $250,000 worth of debt. So I still do remember those feelings. But nowadays, I'm very clean and cut, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is what needs to happen when I'm buying a property. And, a lot of people, when I speak to them, they're like, oh, how do you have that confidence to do so? And I guess repetition has been important to be able to do that. But today I want to talk about something that I've just ventured into, which is very new and I have no experience in. So, if you're just starting out in investing, or you've been investing for a while and you're going to, ramp it up a bit, you might be like, well, I'm a bit scared. Well, here's something that I'm not scared, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. So, going back in about November last year, I was sitting there thinking to myself, about some deals that I'd bought for some of my investors. So about 3-4 years ago, I realized that there was going to be a depression of biblical proportions. I called it the Global Financial Depression, or the GFD. And I said that we would see a very deep depression, and they would have one or two choices. One is to print over it, or the other one is to let it happen. And they've gone for the course of printing over it very quickly, and much more quicker than what I've ever thought, which has taken us to our phase that I've been talking about, which is the hyperinflation, the high level of inflation environment that we're seeing right now. But what I did predict before that is because, looking at all the parameters, everything has a reverse effect. So for those of you that are watching this on a video, let's hold my pen, which I'm playing with here. It's from our friends at Service New South Wales. If you have a pen, you push this side of the pen, this side goes up. You push this side goes up. So looking at the strings that are being pushed and the buttons that are being pushed in the environment, if they lower rates and they print lots of money and all that sort of stuff, naturally prices are going to rise because there's more around on that end. Looking at the commodity prices, that was one of the things that we're going to see increase in value. And going back about 4 years ago, I started telling people, when I say the people, our investors that I help out here at B.Invested, I was telling my investors, let's buy some properties. And I went in like the thief of a night and started buying properties in mining towns. I'm not a fan of mining towns. When I talk about cheap properties and well-priced properties, people often think you have to go to weird places to be able to get them. So if I said I'm buying a property for $300,000, that people would think, oh, we can't find that in Sydney. Well, in 2021, I'm still buying properties in Sydney for $300,000. If I say I'm going to buy a property for $150,000, people think you'd have to go to a regional area. I'm still picking up properties in 2021 in Perth and Brisbane for $150,000. So they're out there. I've always said, mining towns are not my friend, but I'll take anything for a price. So I started going around to some of these mining towns and buying up properties which are like $50,000, $60,000 that once sold for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. So someone literally paid $500,000, and our investors are picking them up $50,000, $60,000. And I went on and purchased a few hundred of these properties for our investors over the last few years. And it was about November late last year in 2020. I thought, shit, these properties have gone from 50,000, 60,000, 70 to 150, 180, 200. they've doubled and tripled and quadrupled in some instances. And I thought to myself, I've been just hustling and making shit happen. All my investors have benefited from buying these cheap, low-priced properties that are, well below what their replacement value would be. They're well below what it would cost to build the property, let alone what people have paid for them in the past. They've got strong positive cash flows. And I was like, shit, I actually didn't pick them up for myself because I've just been excited buying them for our investors. So I was sitting there and I was like, I've got to get myself 10 or 20 of these properties because I want them. They're cheap. They're good. I should have them in my portfolio. But I just, for some reason, I was buying them for everyone else and I didn't get my hands onto them. And I was like, look, let's go and see what's happening in these locations, in other forms of real estate. And I started looking at some shops, and I went and bought a few shops late last year in some of these locations. So like one of the shops I bought was 150 grand, and I just put a tenant in there this week for $27,000 plus outgoing. So that's giving, like a 20% yield. If I was to go resell that as a passive investment, I put it on the market with a commercial agent, I'll probably be able to sell it for like 350 to 400 grand, which is good. But I could only find a couple of these properties, and with commercial there is a lot of extra risk, so it's not something I wanted to go fully in. I just picked up the rats and mice and what was cheap, and I was sitting there. I was like, well, I want to buy more. What do I buy? And I came across a motel, and today's topic is obviously why I'm starting a motel chain. So I came across a motel that was cheap. There was a couple of them. I threw a few inquiries out there, and some agents called me back. And I had actually purchased 2 motels prior. So I bought one in the Blue Mountains and I bought one in Newcastle, but they were not, they've never been run as a motel. And I could never think of anything worse than running a motel. And I'll explain as to why. But those 2 properties, did they work well for me? Didn't they work well? One's been rented and it gave me a fantastic return, but it's still a motel at the end of the day, and it's being a permanent occupancy there. So there is, just issues and hurdles that overcome from a maintenance and the type of people that stay in these properties. One of the properties was in the Blue Mountains. It had 36 rooms in it, I rented it out. It was renting out fabulously. I bought it for $1.65 million many years ago. I had to buy the thing cash because banks wouldn't lend on this thing. And I rented it out for 400 grand a year. But the person that was renting it out for me, it wasn't Blink at the time, it was a different agent. They put all these ice addicts and drug addicts and all that sort of stuff in it, and it caused a big problem. And it hasn't been the best cash flow property since that occurred. And I'm not the motelier because I didn't want to run it as a motel because I've got too many other things that I'm doing and investing in. So I was thinking to myself, if I buy one of these motels, it's going to be a pain in the ass for me to do. It's just going to, it's not the best option for me. Then I started talking, I started seeing how it worked, and I started drawing a few scenarios of how it could stack up. So I went out and bought 1 motel, and I thought if I could buy 10 motels in 2021, that'd be tremendous. And I bought the first one, I bought the second one, bought the third one. That was pretty rapid. And then I was like, hang on a second, right? I've got a business now which has got, massive layers of, better word, like human capital. Like we've got staff and a hierarchy of teams, and we've got great people in the business. We've got in-house corporate counsel and HR and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, well, we've got the infrastructure here. We could just bolt on a motel chain. So I started buying them, and I was like, hang on a second, these numbers could work. So I've built a business model which I believe I can pick up these things cheap, but remembering that, some people are asking me now, like, Nathan, I've seen that you bought motels, I want to buy a motel. And it's like, well, there's a whole new level of risk with these things. They're not just a property, they're actually a business inside the property. So if you've got a block of land, you've limited your potential. You can't have a mum, a dad, a family, an individual renting it. You have to have a motel. And if the motel doesn't work, then, the property loses its value. So I want to buy these things below the infrastructure cost, just that I'm buying them as a land value or a land plus some building component to it. But looking at it, there is a lot higher risk, but you can't get finance for a lot of these things because they haven't run properly. So the bank will not necessarily lend on, they deem it as much higher risk. They view the property as being a very different type of asset for them to hold. And they base the returns on the cash flow. So if the cash flow is good, they'll lend on it. If it's not, then it's not. And most motels, they get cash and all that sort of stuff. So it's been, not run as a normal business should be, and that has a negative effect on the value of the business and therefore the value of the lending that you can get on it. So looking at these properties, I've got a strategy of buying them cash, and that's using cash flow from other sources of income and other businesses and other properties that I own. And I thought, well, if I could build out a strategy to accumulate these properties, it would be cool. So I started with the first 3 or 4, and then now it's turned into I want to get 100 in 5 years. And if you had have asked me at the start of 2020, would I be going out to buy 100 motels, I'd be sitting here saying, you got rocks in your head, why would I ever want to do that for? But this is something that I'm excited by, not just for the fact that I'm accumulating more assets, but more so for the fact that this is one of the businesses that I've set up, which has nothing to do with my core interests. Like tourism is not something that I started in. This is not a business model that I have, that I have experience in. So it's a matter of getting the right people and having the right teams and having the right systems and having the right processes in place to be able to become successful. And it's exciting. There's some scary things about it because it's not something that I've dabbled into beforehand or ever worked in or anything like that. But like I always say, you need to have the right people around you, and we've got the right management, we've got the right infrastructure in place to be able to roll this out on a national forefront. And some of these locations, they do have run into other areas of business that I have. So, they have more use than just what it would for a normal operator. So most of these motels are bought by like a mum and dad operator, a husband and wife operator, whatever. And, they go in there, they run the business, it's their day-to-day thing, and they're not necessarily, business operators when they go in and buy the property. So for me, I'm looking at more from a corporate level of accumulating these assets that are well priced, and obviously building out a motel chain. So I had toyed around with the idea of going to some of the big franchises to get franchises. Last year I was in talks with some of the franchise groups that are international to put into the Blue Mountains motel, which is the first one that I had in those first 2 years ago. And I realized that, what are they giving me? They're giving me a brand, they're giving me a bit of system, a bit of tech, whatever, but that's about all that you get. So I thought if I could scale this on a large level, I wouldn't need to, rely on to one of those franchises. I could just build my own hotel chain. So that's why I went out and started the Birch Hotel Group. And the goal for this venture is to acquire at least 100 motels over the next 5 years. I thought at the start of the year, how could I even get to 10 by the end of this year? Then I restructured how I was doing my purchases and acquisitions, and I was like, hang on a second, I could get to 10 quite easy. Let's get to 20. And so far in this year, we're not even halfway through the year, and we're just getting started, really, and we're up to almost 20 properties so far. So these things are very, very interesting. It's a market which I probably wouldn't recommend for anybody, but I'm just sharing it with you guys. Is it better than residential? Probably not. Residential, you just put a tenant in there, rent it out, goes through a real estate agent. If you want to sell the property, you've got 9 out of 10 people would want to buy a residential property, but these properties are very specialized with what they have, and they're very determined via market conditions. So last year we've seen the scamdemic, and a lot of impacts have happened out there in the tourism world. People ask me, like, Nathan, are you buying these properties cheap because of Corona? And no, I actually think that they've gone up due to Corona, and a lot of people are actually travelling nationally rather than going international. So it has absolutely zero impact based on why I bought it. The reason why I'm buying them is purely to acquire more assets, to diversify my portfolio. If I can build a new portfolio of 100 motels, well, then my portfolio isn't built up of 200 odd residential properties. Now it's built up on 200 residential properties, maybe 30 sort of commercial and land banking opportunities, and then a whole string of motels that are beside that. So diversification is important. And I just think it's timing, right? It's timing. It's like I've built the foundation portfolio. There is absolutely no way that someone could get into the motel space. There is, because mum and dad people do it, but that's like their house. Most of these operators live on site. It's their home. It's their business. It's like a home-based business for them to have. So to do it, like, it is very taxing on people. It's not like you just go and buy a motel as an investment and go and rent it out and have it happen like that. So, there is many layers of risk, and, I guess that has to be mitigated and minimized, and ultimately it needs to fit into your plan. So with seeing all the motels out there, there's 3 different formats of buying a motel. You can either have a leasehold, which is where you go and buy the business and you operate it inside the property, and then you would have an owner of that property, which would be a freehold property as a passive investment. You would have the leasehold, which would be the tenant or the person running the business, or the third option is having the freehold going concern, which is where you buy the actual motel and the business. And that is my game. I was going to rent them out to other people, but then I thought, there's lots of people operating these things out there. How hard is it really to run a motel? You just need good people. But there's lots of these motels that are from far and wide. So, you need to have quality assurance, you need to have systems, you need to have processes in place. So that's where the team comes into play. So I would never have thought about venturing onto this journey if I didn't have, 100 odd staff which are there at disposal that can chip in and help with the processes, the systems. Like, what we've got to look at is we've got IT issues, we've got infrastructure issues, we've got bedding issues, we've got compliance issues, we've got security risks, we've got threat of theft. How easy for someone working in a motel to be able to pocket some cash. How do we manage the staffing? How do we do payroll? How do we do accounts? How do we, structure all of this stuff? And, that is the big risk that is around. There's so many more risks going into this motel space. So, I might sit here in 5 years' time and tell you I did the dumbest and silliest thing of my life by going out there and trying to start a motel franchise. But for what it's worth at this point, I've got a solid plan. I don't give up on my goals. I have shit that's thrown to me every day of the week. Throughout the last 12 years of business, I've had problems that have occurred probably week in, week out from random different things. Over the last 18 years of being a property investor, I've had things that have gone wrong right from my first property, but that didn't determine me. It just made me smarter, it made me wiser, it made me more committed to make things differently and refine that process. So I guess a few different forces came into play as to why I actually went out to start a motel group. So this is going to be run as a corporation. It's going to be run from a corporate perspective. It's not something that I'm franchising. It's not something that I'm training people on. It's not something I'm going to say, hey guys, go buy a motel, because put simply, I could blow my fingers off very easily here. And, if I was to give you guys advice on how to do that, I have no experience to tell you to do it or not to do it. There is a lot of risk that's around it. So it's not like something that, I would be, saying, let's do a buyer's agency and sell motels or anything like that. It's not my game. My game is I'm just simply here sharing with you guys what I'm up to. I'm an investor. Property is my favorite game. I invest in the property, crypto, into metals, into businesses, into all different sort of financial instruments, into different sorts of passive sort of investments. And, this is just a new sort of, investment class that I've got here to diversify my position. So other areas of it is that I want to get into logistics, I want to get into farming and, sort of agriculture, and from farm to plate. So each of these motels, if we've got 100 motels, then I've got 100 sites where I've got people that are working on site. I've got 100 sites where I've got people visiting every day. And these people will need to eat, they'll need to sleep. And, at some point I'll probably start a food sort of component to it, which obviously there's different sort of avatars of the clients that would be coming to these sites. So you might have a mining town, for example, which would need steak and burgers, where you might have a tourism spot, which might have acai bowls and juices. So it's something very well out of my normal scope. But when I started talking about energy and electricity a few years ago, once I started playing around with solar farms and building out solar farms from scratch, literally down to the point where I had to get myself immersed with it. I was out there locating secondhand solar panels to renew, to have renewable energy. I was locating and picking up. I didn't just locate the panels and get the distribution channels set up. I physically went and picked up the solar panels via trucks until I got myself to a point where I overloaded trucks and, certain different things. So things went wrong there, blew up a lot of tech and IT. But here's something that's very new and very different to me. And I wanted to share the journey and just show you guys from a bit of a top level just what I'm doing. But, there's lots of moving parts in these things. So, am I going to just go straight into motels and you're never going to see me again? No. I have a 5-year play on this of how I see it working out past the 5 years. The goals that I set for myself are pretty, aggressive over those period of years. So if I can meet those goals, it would be really, really great. When I first started my property portfolio, I had a goal of having 10 properties in my portfolio at the age of 18, or 17, I thought of this. I wanted to have by the age of 30, 10 properties. I thought it was completely impossible to do so. I'd never seen anyone do it beforehand. I dealt with all the shit that was thrown my way. I kept hustling and hustling and hustling. And here I am as a 36-year-old talking to you guys about 230 properties plus a motel franchise, motel group. So for me, I can't foresee what it looks like past 5 years or past 100 motels. An end goal that I have for the foreseeable future in that 5 years is to have a passive income stream coming in from that arm of my business of $1 million per month passive. So I talked about it. That's just a whole new arm of what I do. I want $1 million a month coming in passive. That'll be a $12 million a year passive income coming from there. And by that point, I'll be like, this isn't big enough. I want to go buy skyscrapers. I want to become a developer. I want to do something else. So I do see the next stages after I build out this motel group being in the agriculture space and farming, as well as food and transportation. And there's other things that are on top of that as well. So, with it, that's a little bit about my vision of it. I was just seeing if I had any more notes that I wanted to talk about, but that's sort of why I got into the motel space. It is very tiresome. I'm doing 20-hour days and lots of things on. I was laughing beforehand because I had like 3 interviews back to back, talking about on-site managers, meeting people over the phone and all that sort of stuff, going through the processes of my team. And this week I found myself looking and sampling like toiletries and all different stuff, right? It's like, what did I do with my life? How come I'm looking at this? I never would have pictured this is what I would be doing. But it's for a bigger picture, it's for a bigger cause. And I guess one of the final reasons as to why I like the tourism sort of motel space is community. Communities of people. There's a lot of people that have been affected over the years. Everybody lives in a community, and being able to play a crucial role in many communities around the country. Imagine being involved in 100 communities in different locations in the country. It's really, really cool. Stuff that I never thought would have been possible, stuff that I never thought that existed. I've got mates which travel. Their life is just travel, and they love traveling. And they just travel around and party and be in different countries and all that sort of stuff. And I don't like planes. That's one of my little things, right? I don't like planes. You can put me in the tens of millions of dollars worth of debt, but put me on a plane, I can't handle it. Looking at the opportunity of building out these communities, I learned lots of things about Australia. Like, I spent weeks just driving like tens of thousands of kilometres around the country, and I learned lots of things that no one would ever realise about our country that we live in. So, being a part of that community and being a hub of that community and being an icon of that community is really, really cool. So that's just one of the final things that I think is a benefit, like from a high level looking down, is having the impact on those communities, because a lot of them have been affected negatively. And being able to put some positivity in there, injecting some new blood and some new inspiration is really, really cool. So and as a little final thing, like as my sign off today, I'm going to do something different, right? Obviously you can keep watching and listening to us at YouTube and at Spotify and Apple and Google Play, but I have had people writing in about, Nathan, I am a supplier for toiletries. I'm a supplier for, soaps. I'm a supplier for bedding. If there's anything that you think that you could contribute to this business venture that I'm going into, feel free to reach out to my team. Flick us an email. Hey Nathan, can you get your team to, put me in contact? Because I am very hands-on at the moment in this, and I want to make sure that I have quality assurance, and my systems and processes are very, very important. I will be making another podcast shortly talking about the importance of systems, processes, and procedures. As an investor, I didn't get to 230 properties by chance or by luck, or a lot of people out there, a lot of losers will tell me I'm lucky, right? It's all about luck. Just ask any loser. It's not about luck. It's about hustle. It's about being committed. It's about having a vision and doing what it takes. But without all of that, you need to have the right structure, and that comes in with having strategy, and systems and processes are a part of that. So I need to know, because I don't know anything about the space, I need to know everything I can about it. So hit us up if you are a supplier, or if you do know someone or some way that you see yourself being able to contribute to the community. Feel free to hit up my team. I want to talk to Nathan and the team about the motels. I think I can help in this way, or I've got a business that could help supply, or whatever the case may be. Look forward to chatting soon, and keep watching, keep listening, and thanks a lot for listening to me talk about my goals. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. And you're telling lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, like Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking.